Of all the Trudeau-loving media in Canada, the CBC has a special place in its heart for the current Prime Minister. This could be because the CBC's $1.4 billion a year taxpayer-funded budget is at an all-time high, compliments of Mr. Trudeau. But does this cozy relationship now make the CBC feel like they're above the law? I asked that question to investigative journalist Ryan Thorpe of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation to see why his organization is launching a legal challenge against the CBC.
They're openly breaking the law, and Tait in particular seems to think that she's above the law, she's unaccountable, which is outrageous. In December 2023, just weeks before Christmas, CBC President Catherine Tait announced hundreds of job losses at the state broadcaster, citing a budget shortfall. And she went on to CBC's flagship nightly newscast, The National.
I'm just curious about something. I'm going to presume no bonuses this year. I mean, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation said a Freedom of Information request showed $16 million were paid in bonuses in 2022. Can we establish that that is not happening this year?
It's too early to say where we are for this year.
So there's a chance bonuses could still happen at a time when jobs are being cut?
I'm not going to comment on something that hasn't been discussed at this point.
So I got curious. I filed an access to information request specifically targeting executive bonuses. So the bonuses for CBC President Catherine Tait and the 7 other senior executives. The CBC sent me a letter saying, hey, we need a 30-day extension on this access to information request, which then pushed the deadline for responding to May 10th.
Ms. Tait, an access to information was put forward by the Taxpayers Federation and asking for those 2023 bonus amounts. The CBC responded by saying that they would provide those, but not until May 10th. Today is May 7th, and so I'm curious if 3 days prior you would be able to give those numbers here. I'm sure you have them, you just have not agreed to release the documents yet. However, I did write you a letter, I gave you a heads up, so I'm curious if you'd share them here.
And I thank you, I thank the Honourable Member from Lethbridge for the opportunity to clarify a lot of misinformation that has been circulating regarding performance pay in 22-23.
Finally, on May 10th, they do release a record showing that there was about 3.5 or 3.7 million in total compensation for the senior executives at the CBC, but they didn't break down that money in terms of what was base salary, what was benefits, what was bonus. So they didn't answer the request as it was written.
After pushing the release of these documents to 3 days after Tait testified in Ottawa, the CBC still refused to tell Canadians how much money their executive team was getting in bonuses.
CBC President Catherine Tait seems to think that she doesn't owe Canadian taxpayers, the people who fund her organization and pay her salary, she doesn't seem to think she owes them the same transparency that she gets her journalists to demand of politicians, which is outrageous. I mean, the CBC takes more than $1.4 billion from taxpayers. They're currently at a record high in terms of level of government funding. It's worth noting, Tait has been crying poor for ages now.
And I can just reassure the committee members that our industry is in crisis. Rather than be indexing on performance pay, I would urge this committee to think about what are the solutions. I think sustainable long-term funding is one of the solutions.
The bottom line is this. Look, taxpayers pay the bills. Taxpayers have every right to know where that money is going. She should come clean in terms of how much of that money is going towards their bonuses. That is a bare minimum.
100% agree. In response to the CBC flagrantly breaking access to information laws, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation has launched a legal challenge, filing an official complaint with the Office of the Information Commissioner, or OIC, who is responsible for settling access to information disputes. But according to Ryan, the OIC has some serious problems of its own.
One note to make about Canada's access to information system is that even if they rule in our favor, And even if they tell the CBC to disclose these records, the CBC can simply refuse. The OIC, unfortunately, doesn't actually have an enforcement mechanism, which essentially makes it a fairly toothless organization. This is a massive loophole in Canada's access to information system, which is really broken just kind of across the board. And so if we get to that point and we get the OIC ruling that we're seeking and the CBC is still refusing to disclose these records, at that point we will be looking at a lawsuit and taking the CBC to court, which is really the only way to force their hand in a situation like this.
When do you expect that we get a ruling from the OIC, or what's the timeline looking like for the future? When do you think we'll actually know who got the bonuses and how much money?
The reality is that these things move incredibly slow. The Office of the Information Commissioner has a massive backlog of complaints that they're attempting to adjudicate. And funnily enough, the Trudeau government, which ran back in the day, I'm sure many viewers will remember, on promises to reform the Access to Information Act, to strengthen it, to make government open and transparent by default.
We're a government that wants to earn Canadians' trust by demonstrating that we trust Canadians. When disclosure and access to information is just the way Parliament behaves.
Well, the Trudeau government just cut the budget of the Office of the Information Commissioner, a government that has no concern about ever balancing budgets. When it comes to that, apparently they can't find the money, despite the fact that they are showering money all over the place, everywhere.
What do you think the punishment should be for this? Like, do you think Catherine Tait herself or whoever's responsible should lose their job?
I think that this isn't the first thing that has come up where Tait has utterly mismanaged the operations at CBC, but this is a particularly galling example where they're trying to cover up something that Canadians have every right to know. But yeah, Tait 100% needs to go. I mean, the tone is set at the top. She is in the top job over there, so the buck stops with her.
But why would Catherine Tait potentially put her ridiculously lucrative job on the line just to hide this information from the public? Does she really think she's above the law and can't be held responsible? So the CBC and the mainstream media more generally, in a way, they like set the narrative of what people are thinking. Because if they repeat a story over and over again, that's what people will be thinking about. That's how voters will behave. Do you think this like power that they have over Canadians, do you think that power makes them feel like they're above the law?
I think, I mean, it certainly seems to in this case. The Access to Information Act is very clear. They're openly breaking the law. And Tait in particular seems to think that, you know, she's above the law. She's unaccountable. That isn't the case. And the Canadian Taxpayers Federation is going to keep up the fight until we drag this information out into the light. And then in terms of the sense to which the mainstream media, which includes obviously the CBC, sets the narrative in this country, I think you're 100% spot on with that. But I also think their power to do so is on the decline.
And on that note, please continue to support independent conservative media. I'll keep making these videos if you guys watch them. I mean, we've had some good success on what we've done so far. So please like, comment, most importantly, subscribe to Backbenchers. A lot of exciting stuff coming out in the near future, so stay tuned for that. Thanks a lot, guys.